Today is a bit of a somber day, so I'm hailing it as progress. October the 20th, 2025. Progress. They're saying it's a victory for children, a landmark change in the name of safety. But what if it's not safety at all? What if it's not? What if something far more familiar, a system tightening its grip on one half of parenthood while pretending to protect the other? Because this week, the UK government announced it will repeal the presumption of parental involvement from the Children Act 1989. That phrase, presumption of parental involvement, it sounds bureaucratic, cold, but it's the very one thread that said every child deserves both parents unless there's a proven reason not to. Now that thread is being cut and they're celebrating. The headlines are glowing. The campaigners are triumphant, but there's one group not invited to the celebration. See, for decades, fathers have been told to prove their worth, prove they're a safe place, they're safe, prove they're not abusive, prove they deserve to see their own children. And this is in a system that's meant to say innocent until proven guilty. I have not spoken to one dad that hasn't gone to family court and felt that he's had to prove his innocence. The system hands out protection orders like they're party favors. No evidence, just allegations that echo through the walls of the family courtrooms where sunlight never reaches. This repeal doesn't just remove a clause from an old act. It removes the one faint assumption that children benefit from both, knowing both parents and know both sides of the family. So what does that do for the culture, the history of the family, the identity of the individual? It replaces it with fear. And fear, once it enters a courtroom, never leaves quietly. Let's talk facts. The Harm Panel report, the government's own inquiry, I think it was 2020, admitted the family courts were not safe for survivors of domestic abuse. Again, that's only, like everything's being reported on, like it's only women that are victims of domestic abuse. Because I can tell you now, there is no material for male victims of domestic abuse. I've had a handful of men be recognised as victims of domestic abuse. And when they're going through the support afterwards, if they've even been offered the support afterwards, they're going through the books, they're going through the materials, and it's all directed at women being the victims, men being the perpetrators. So if there's no material for male victims of domestic abuse, and when a professional has to present this stuff to a male victim, and throughout those conversations and those times, they're constantly apologising for it being directed at women, is that not more traumatic? Or in a woman's world, it's more traumatic, isn't it? Or I'm being reminded about my abuser. That's what we get told. But it's okay for a bloke. It's okay for a man to be treated that way. They said the pro-contact culture put children at risk. They said they weren't wrong about the risk. They were wrong about who it applied to. Because nowhere in that 200-page document did they face a harder truth, that abuse isn't gendered. Abuse has no gender. That women can harm. That men can be victims. That the court system's blind spot isn't in its laws, it's in its assumptions of seeing fathers lose everything. I've lost everything. Not because they were violent, not because they were neglectful, but because they dared to challenge a lie that says nurture and fathers control, that says believe all women, even when evidence says otherwise, that says a man's love is dangerous and his absence is safer. And now, with this repeal, the government just made that lie a little bit more powerful. You'll hear people call this change child-centered. They'll tell you it's about protecting the vulnerable. But tell that to the fathers who've spent years in contact centres, supervised like criminals, for daring to want bedtime stories and school runs. Tell that to the children who'll grow up asking, where was my dad? And hearing the only silence, negative connotations. This isn't protection. It's about punishment disguised as progress. And it won't stop at the guilty. It never does. Because once you build a system on presumption, any presumption, it consumes the truth that doesn't fit the narrative. And right now, that narrative is simple. Father's bad, mother's safe. Challenge it, and you're labelled dangerous. Defend yourself, and you're accused of control. Stay silent, and you lose your child anyway. They say family law should protect children, but you can't protect a child by destroying half their world. So tonight we're not celebrating, we're not applauding, we're asking the question that no one in Westminster seems to want to ask. No Kafkas officer wants to ask when they're doing these investigations. No one's brave enough to answer the question. If equality matters, if fairness means anything, then why does it vanish the moment a man walks into family court? Repeal the presumption if you must, but don't call it justice. Call it what it is. It's the quiet burial of fatherhood, and that is the death of presumption. Family law's war on fathers, that's just what it is. I remember sitting in the corridor of a family court once. The air was heavy, not with justice, but with waiting. Everyone there was waiting. Mothers waiting to be believed, fathers waiting to be forgiven for things they hadn't done, children waiting for decisions made by people who'd never met them. You could hear the sound of lives being decided behind those doors, not shouted, not screamed, just quietly signed off. A father becomes a visitor, a child becomes a case number, and the system calls that order. They say the presumption of parental involvement was dangerous. They said it put children at risk. But let's be honest, the system never truly followed it anyway. You only need to read the Domestic Abuse Commissioner's report this year. It's filed with stories where unsupervised contact was allowed with proven abusers, yes, but it doesn't mention, what it doesn't mention are the other cases. The ones that never make the headlines. The ones where fathers proved the abuser come from the other side and still lost everything. See, the law doesn't just fail fathers. It fails children who grow up thinking one half of love is missing because the court said so. It tells boys that masculinity is a threat. It tells girls that men are mean and dangerous by default. And it calls this progress. Now, there's some statistics from Kafkas, that the body that advises the courts, that show that over 90% of child contact cases involve allegations of domestic abuse. 90%. Now, tell me that straight. Do we honestly believe that 9 out of 10 parents are monsters? Or is this word abuse just the most powerful weapon left in the divorce arsenal? A word that stops the other parent's heart before the evidence even arrives. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 parents are bad. 9 out of 10 dads are bad. That's what we're saying. But nobody wants to say that out loud, do they? Because the question is to invite suspicion. To even ask for balance makes you problematic. So men stay silent. And silence in this system looks like guilt. We have built a culture that confuses protection with punishment, that calls it safeguarding when it's actually severance, that rewards whoever screams first and listens to whoever cries last. And now, with this repeal, the message is clear. The presumption that a child needs both parents is gone. That belief that a father might be safe, gone. The possibility of fairness buried under good intentions and bad data. I know men who spend years in supervised contact centres just to see their children 2 hours a fortnight, and they get charged for it. They get charged even if the mum doesn't turn up, and they don't get a refund. They smile, they play, they keep it together. And when the clock hits 3, they watch their child or children walk away, hand in hand with someone who's taught them to fear their own father. The state calls that safeguarding. I call it slow motion grief. And one day, the child grows up and they start to ask questions. And the system has no answers, only paperwork. You can repeal laws, you can rewrite acts, but you can't repeal human nature. You can't legislate love out of existence. So if this is victory, if this really is progress, then maybe the next headline should be, I don't know, honest. It'd be like something like, government announces new era of protection. Fathers now presumed expendable. You can only bury the truth for so long. Lies rot. And when they rot, they smell, even through the polish of government press releases. They can repel presumption. They can rewrite the Children Act until the ink runs dry. But they can't silence the growing sound of fathers who are done whispering. This isn't about men versus women. It never was. It's about what happens when a system builds safety on stereotypes and then acts surprised when it creates more harm. The goal is to protect children, then start by protecting honesty. Stop treating fathers like defendants. Stop treating mothers like they're saints. Start treating evidence like evidence. We don't need a war between parents. We need a system that recognizes the war already being fought inside the children's heads The war between loyalty and love, truth and fear. Every time the court chooses bias over balance, a child learns that fairness is a myth. And once they learn that, they carry it with them into every relationship, every heartbreak, every argument they'll ever have. That's the real inheritance of the family law court system. Not justice, but generalization and general distrust. So no, I don't celebrate this repeal. I mourn it because it tells me that the state has stopped believing that a father's presence has value unless he can prove it on a cross-examination. So to the fathers watching this, don't give them the silence they expect. Document everything, speak carefully, stay calm, build communities, support each other, stop hating on each other, stop arguing with each other. Because when the systems forget their purpose, only people can remind them. This isn't a call to anger, it's a call to witness, because change doesn't start with power, it starts with truth, spoken out loud over and over again until someone, somewhere, finally decides to listen. They can repeal the presumption, but they can't repeal reality. And the reality is this: children need both parents, always have, always will.